It's time to experience Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast.
Hey, kid, you want a toy?
What does the man know about toys?
Action figures each sold separately. Batteries not included.
With Kung Fu Grip, the hands that grip.
I have 3 of each. 1 to display, 1 to open, and 1 just in case.
Why do you keep all your toys in boxes? How do you play with them?
I don't. I collect them.
You're not a collector's item. You're a child's plaything. You are a toy!
Action figures and playsets for ages 6 and up. Way up!
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our Star Wars Extravaganza show. Brian, are you feeling up for a trip to a galaxy far, far away?
Yeah. We survived May the 4th, which, as many people consider across the world, Star Wars Day, but we beg to differ. We'll talk about that in a moment. But how was your May the 4th, Chris?
Mine was good. I actually spent it. Sarah and I spent it at Hollywood Studios on Batuu for part of the day with some friends from up north that were in town. So it was really awesome, especially the company. And we actually have never, well, I can't say that. We did, you'll remember the old Star Wars weekends. We happened to unintentionally timed some trips down here to Star Wars weekends in the past. So we have been there, in May before, but I don't think we've ever been there on May the 4th.
Yeah, because usually it would be towards the second or third week of May that Star Wars weekends would start. Yeah, you're absolutely right. May the 4th would usually be its own kind of event. It would be kind of like a precursor. People would be getting excited. Ooh, within a week or two, Star Wars weekend starts. That was like a tradition for, gosh, how many years? What it started, I think, in right around 2000 or 99. And it around with the prequel start, and it went all the way to 2015. I think almost like 14, 15 years it ran. So yeah, it was quite an experience.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to, I think, be down here when we lived up north twice for Star Wars weekends. And it was really, I feel like they put it a lot more into that than they did May the 4th. So I kind of miss Star Wars weekends. I wish they'd bring it back, but
don't bring me tears.
Yeah.
I had lots of great memories, but May the 4th was me. It was pretty chill. I think we watched Rogue One. We sat down, we picked a Star Wars movie we wanted to watch. We watched Rogue One and just chilled, played with some Star Wars toys. It was all good.
Yeah. So speaking of watching Star Wars movies, Attack of the Clones turned 20 yesterday, and I watched that last night, kind of reminiscing of where I watched it for midnight, and all that good stuff.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I remember it well. I remember what I think was pretty cool was the different kinds of posters they did for Attack of the Clones. It was a little bit different than any other movie. I remember that in particular. The Size Matters Not they did for the IMAX. I think it was one of the first IMAX movies that Star Wars did, huh?
Yeah, it was. And it was the perfect, it was like the perfect ad campaign to use that poster with Yoda on it, especially, knowing we didn't know going into the movie, or we had an idea, but seeing the scenes with Yoda in them towards the end of the movie too. So it was perfect.
Spoilers.
20-year-old spoilers.
20 years later. Yeah. But though it was fun celebrating the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones, we do have another holiday coming up right around the corner. Actually, when this episode will release, which is on May 25th, to many in the true Star Wars fandom, as I like to say, we call this Star Wars Day. And why would we call it that, Chris?
Well, that's the day that the actual original Star Wars, before it was known as A New Hope, came out, was May 25th, 1977.
Absolutely. And you know what else makes it Star Wars Day? The city of Los Angeles.
That's
they named May 25th Star Wars Day from now on till the end of time, and gave a key to the city and whatnot to Lucasfilm, and all is history, as we like to say. And not only was the original Star Wars came out May 25th, but a number of other Star Wars films followed in suit. Actually, I think there's about 3 or 4 of the different Star Wars films have been released on the actual day of May 25th. So
I believe you are correct.
Yeah, we got to take advantage of that Memorial Day weekend draw. they didn't know how it was going to do, right? So we got to put it up against a time where we have more than a typical weekend to grab your moviegoer. So if they only knew now what they knew then, right? But yeah, that was pretty magical time in filmmaking, a renaissance, if you will, of in the start of big budget films.
Yeah, well, and it was something new because science fiction or science fantasy is, as it's, Star Wars is mostly known as.
True.
There was nothing like that before that. And I mean, it's well documented on a lot of the special effects and how they were pulled off and how like they were doing stuff right up to the very end.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't know if it was all going to come together, but
in a garage
now, I mean, I think those effects hold up 40 years later. You know what I mean?
Of course, it's like
Yeah.
I would say there are certain films where the effects still hold up. I think of 2001. I think of Blade Runner. I think of Star Wars. Even though they use the current technologies of that time, they still hold up to this day.
Yep.
Not much extra work has been added other than to bring up other species or different elements you couldn't have done without computer generated work. And yeah, I'm giving some support to George and his special editions. Yes. Okay. A director's allowed to make the version of the film he wants to make.
I'm okay with special editions. What I didn't like, or what I guess I shouldn't say don't like, was the constant tinkering and going back. I think that when the special editions came out, it was cool to go and see those in theaters again. And for the most part, I think what was added was fine.
And it was my first time.
Yeah, exactly. See, but I think like the added stuff, like the McClunky that was added, like the latest edition, that's the kind of stuff that bugged me. But I remember taking my sisters to go see special editions, and I got one of them hooked on Star Wars when I took her to see, stuff. So it's, those hold a special place as well.
Well, bringing it back to toys, because that's what we talk about here. What have you gotten most recently, Chris? What have you acquired?
So I've acquired quite a bit. Again, we go through these with the supply chain thing still being a thing. It's like it's periods of nothing and then periods of everything, and it seems like I've been in this period of everything. But something we I don't want to steal your thunder here, but we both got it. So
we'll say it at the same time.
Yeah, all
the
right.
Mafex Endgame cap. There it is. We both got it within like a week and a half of each other, and I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to be getting some more Mafex into my collection.
Yeah, they're good, man. They're good.
Yeah. And then of course I got I've talked about it a little bit on the last show. I got my MMPR Ninjas. I actually just found the black and blue ones at Target yesterday.
Oh, nice.
I was able to cancel my pre-order, and then I pulse shipped the other two. So I have all of the ones that are current. There's more coming.
I hope the QC is good on it.
Actually, it's funny because people have been talking about
QC
issues with those, and I must be lucky because I mean, of course, the two that I got from Pulse was a roll of the dice, and they were both fine. And then I was able to choose between the blue and the black because they had 3 blues and 2 blacks. That's good. So I was able to kind of choose the best ones. But I got them home, tested the joints and everything. I didn't have any problems. No 2 left hands or any craziness. No breakage. Pretty good paint. So I was happy with those. I'm going to tell you right now, though, they're not going to be ones I'm going to try and get in crazy poses. They're going to go in my MMPR display and just kind of be that. I did get, it should come as no surprise to anyone, I did get the 2 new Dino Fury Megazords. I got those from Target, which is the Mosa Razor Zord and the Petra Free Zord to go along with the regular Dino Fury Zords. And then I got the Super Sentai Goseiger a bunch of Megazords from that line. And then to bring it back home to Star Wars, I have now the whole Star Wars Retro Mando 2 collection. So all 6 of those new ones. And then yesterday, Target was a good day at Target yesterday. I found the TVC Ahsoka from I forget which planet that's from, but it's from the Mandalorian TV series.
Tython.
No, it's from
No?
it's where they first run into her.
Oh, yeah.
Begins
I
with
know.
a C, but it's
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on it. But
Gotcha.
and then they had a TVC Yoda, which I'd actually I got mine from Amazon. It was in my mailbox, but Amazon's a roll of the dice. So I picked up the minty fresh, newly put out one at Target, and man, I'm glad I did, because the Amazon one went back to Amazon today.
It was Corvus, by the way.
Corvus, yes, that's it. Thank
There
you.
go. And for me, are you done? Sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
I know. For me, it was a couple big items, couple small items. One was I got my hands on an amazing deal on a Hot Toys Return of the Jedi Luke from MMS 429, which came out a good 3-4 years ago. I was able to get my hands on that for a really, really amazing price. And I also picked up a Sideshow Deluxe R2D2 to go along with him. And a couple small things. Grabbed a lot of the new WWE Elite stuff's been coming out, and there's just a few wrestlers that I'm trying to grab definitive versions of them for my display. And I picked up The Rock, which came with some different soft good accessories, and Edge, which came with his original like red trench coat looking plastic ugly thing from the 90s. So and his sunglasses, his shades. So I was able to add more to my my display for those folks, and I'll switch it over to what I'm most looking forward to. I've actually been sitting in the prepare to ship category on Sideshow for a while now for my Hot Toys Clone Wars Darth Maul. It should be shipping any day. Hopefully, it's been sitting on the waiting to ship for 12 days now. And we're both waiting on, and I know Chris will talk about this as well, is the Mafex Endgame Thor, which got pushed back again to June. And my Mafex Return of the Jedi Boba Fett re-release, which also got pushed back to June. It was originally supposed to come out last month, but I'll turn it over to Chris.
I was gonna say that Boba Fett that looks good. I didn't get that one because I have enough versions of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
but that
I've been
one was,
wanting that for years.
It was tempting.
I wanted it on the secondary market, and I'm glad I waited.
Yeah, and so you're a fan of the Attitude Age, I'm guessing. And
yeah,
WWE.
that was my time. Man.
That was when I watched it too. I don't watch much anymore. I mean, I know
I don't either.
I have friends that look for wrestling, so I still look at the wrestling stuff in the aisle for them. But Attitude Era is where I remember being into it. But as Brian mentioned, I'm looking forward to the Mafex Endgame Thor. If the cap is anything to go on, the Thor is going to be amazing.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking forward to Motu Sunman, which Big Bad Toy Store just got theirs in stock, but I was able to get mine from Amazon for $9, which is like
nice.
$10. Yeah. So I'm just going to wait it out till Amazon ships it, which should be soon here. And then I think I said this last month, there's, some people have started to say that they've gotten these from like Canada, Canadian distributors, but that's Spirit and Storm Shadow from Classifieds. Hasbro brand team, if you're hearing me, you're killing my enthusiasm for this line with the long waits in between.
I hope they're listening. I think it's time we head up to the stars.
Kenner's new Star Wars action figures, each sold separately.
Yoda, AT-AT Driver, 41 action figures from Kenner's Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back collection, each sold separately.
You are unwise to lower your defenses.
There is no way of knowing when the dark side may rise up again. During the hours of darkness, the Empire could be refueling for the attack. Will the armored Sentinel transport vehicle be ready to retaliate before it's too late? Will the rebel force be strong enough to deal with the Imperial stormtroopers? Only you can decide with Star Wars toys.
Now, the universe has changed forever. The Star Wars Power of the Force collection. When Darth Vader and his stormtroopers attack, join Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, and Han Solo. Escape in the mighty Millennium Falcon.
Now, Star Wars comics come alive as expanded universe packages open to reveal a cool 3D play scene. As Luke Skywalker faced the evil clone emperor in a final showdown.
Star Wars begun. The Clone War has. The Geonosis Battle Arena, where you can control all the action. Jedi heroes fight off countless enemies with powerful Force action as the arena erupts in chaos.
Look! The fate of the galaxy is in your hands.
99, 100. Ready or not, here I come. R2's behind the pencil pot and Han's behind the lamp.
Come on, using the Force is cheating, Vader. New Star Wars action figures from all 6 films. Collect them all you can.
I'm home.
Hey, Dad.
The Force was strong between father and son.
You got it?
What are you doing, buddy?
It's my Ewok happy dance.
Of course it is.
Today,
Hello.
Hey, Daddy.
it is passed on to a new generation.
You got it?
Ewok dance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the circle is now complete.
Look at this, huh, guy?
Hey, Dad? Yeah. Why do you keep all your toys in boxes? How do you play with them?
I don't. I collect them.
Does Mom know you keep mac and cheese in here?
Okay, this isn't for eating. I collect these too.
So, toys you can't play with and mac and cheese you can't eat? This is a room of lies.
So yeah, as you heard in that montage, there has been a lot of figures released for Star Wars. And it all goes back to the infamous first film, which we were celebrating the beginning of our show. That's coming on May 25th, which is the day this show will be released. But Star Wars started, the figures started in 1977, but they didn't quite start in 77, right, Chris?
No, not really. They kind of started as a box.
As a box. So why don't we take ourselves back to that time where those first commercials, those first announcements that we ever heard about these toys coming from a galaxy far, far away.
Star Wars figures. R2-D2. Chewbacca, Luke, and Princess Leia. They're the Star Wars Early Bird set of figures. These action figures are not yet available, but this Star Wars Early Bird certificate package is in stores with this colorful Star Wars picture display stand and certificate to send in to get a set of figures by mail. They'll be sent to you at home between February 1st and June 1st. The Star Wars Early Bird certificate package, new from Kenner.
So pre-orders began a long time ago, right, Chris?
That's the original pre-order.
The original pre-order, right? So, as many of us know, if you've ever watched the many documentaries like Plastic Galaxy, for example, or The Toys That Made Us, we know that Star Wars toys weren't physical in hand yet, other than a box, like you said, right, Chris?
Absolutely, yeah. You didn't get figures that Christmas. You got a box saying you'd get figures in the spring.
And as you heard in the clip, it was the Early Bird Mail Away set. And what came in that box?
So it was R2, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, and Luke.
Yep, those were the figures. But what did it give you? What did you actually buy in the store for your kid that Christmas?
Well, I mean, it was like a big cardboard. It was like a cardboard box. It wasn't quite a box. It was more like an envelope made of cardboard. And in there was your certificate, which you filled out and mailed away. And then they told, it said that you would have your figures. I don't remember if they gave a specific time frame. I think they just said like sometime that spring. And then you waited.
Imagine Christmas Day, 1977. If you have a Christmas tree, or if it's Hanukkah and you're going down to celebrate the gift for that day or for Christmas Day, and you're going down to open up, or whatever tradition you experience at the end of the year, and you open up that gift, and under that wrapping is a box.
Yeah, it kind of, it's hard to imagine because I didn't do the Early Bird set. I don't want to give too much away about how old I am, but basically,
I was not alive. I am fair to say that. I'm going to have to rely on you heavily, Chris, here to help explain the what do you call it? The vintage time of figures, right?
Right. So I was still very, very young when when Star Wars came out. I am older than Star Wars, but not by much. So we'll leave it at that. So I don't have the recollection of the early bird set, but from what we've heard on those shows that you referenced just a minute ago, that actually did very well. People were very excited. I don't know if the kids were as excited, but the parents definitely were buying that and putting it under the tree. And as we know, once those figures started to show up, it was gangbusters from there. And we have the original Star Wars line, but what they did that was smart was they carried those figures through all the way through Return of the Jedi, and even into Power of the Force. When they changed the card and added the coin, a lot of those characters even made it onto those cards. Some of them are very rare, were very rare, but they did carry it forward, which was something they did through the whole line. So, when we get to Empire, those figures carried over through Return of the Jedi and Power of the Force, and so on and so forth, which was something that's not something you're going to see today. So that was very smart on their part. It allowed kids to get those characters later on. And, in that line, I don't know if it's famously or infamously, but Darth Vader only had the one figure. That was the only Darth Vader you got, was that very first one. And they just carried it forward through the whole line.
Which is laughable because you think decades later, we would celebrate. It's the 100th version of Luke Skywalker. It's the 300th Boba Fett figure. It's the 200th Darth Vader figure. Packaging.
We got a 200th Vader and a 500th Vader, I believe. Packaging. Yep.
Yeah. So they figured it out, right? They figured out the most successful figures, the ones that were most asked for by kids. But when we think back to the Kenner line, what was infamous about that? Like, is there certain terminology that you say was used? Like, I've heard the terms, and we use this in Turtle Talk too, right? There's the 18 back, or the 18 card back, or the 12 back,
the 12 back, the 12A back,
there it is.
There's all kinds, and there's variations on those. So you have the letters A, B, C, depending on what else was on the card, what kind of cross cells were on the card. There was certain stickers that they put on the cards. Like for me, I don't have a lot of on card stuff, but I do have some Yoda stuff, and 32 back is a big one for Yoda. 12 back refers to the original 12, which the lineup was the original 12 in the lineup. I could probably tell you all of them off the top of off my head, but I don't want to, I don't want to get it wrong. But so, you have those backs, and then I think the original run, I want to say, I know there's 96 figures in the run, but I think it was only 92 card backs, because some of those came out like, the Max Rebo band, and some of those other ones were different kind of packaging. But yep, you have the card backs where we refer to that, but you also have not only that terminology, but collect them all. That's where that started.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's probably why, one of the hardest habits to break as a collector now, maybe not now, but over the years, has been breaking that mentality of collect them all, because that's just been something, and other lines have used that as well. So, but Star Wars really came up with that, collect them all. And here's a whole set of characters that you could have, and ask the commercials. I remember ask your parents, stuff like that. So
yeah, I do want to say, I do want to give a moment of silence for the company that passed on Star Wars, and that's the Mego Corporation. I do want to give a moment of silence for that company, though they are making a comeback now, but they had the opportunity of a lifetime, and they passed it on to Kenner.
And Kenner ran with that ball all the way as far as they could.
Yes, they did. Yeah. I just had to give an honorable mention to the one company that decided to pass.
Yeah. Well, not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but it's interesting because, we have what's, a very iconic scale now in that 3 3/4 inch or 1/18 scale, right? If we did, the Mego style, I don't think we'd have that. We would have that style that they did, which was more of
8-inch cloth figure.
Yep. So, maybe it's a good thing that it worked out the way it did.
Maybe so. But towards the end of that line, after the films came out, there were still a couple of other related pieces that were made outside of the films by Kenner, right?
I believe you're referring to droids and Ewoks.
That's correct, sir.
Yep, that is correct. So I don't have much recollection of those toy lines. I remember watching the shows, but I was never really into those toy lines. And even as
I
an
remember
adult,
those. I was
Yeah.
old enough for those.
well, I was gonna say that's probably, yeah, I could see that. That's probably around that time frame. But even as an adult collector, for me, they're just not in my wheelhouse. I did the movie ones, but right now, actually, Hasbro is paying homage to that, and they have the droids. They've been hitting recently. The Boba
Pick it up at
Fett,
your local Target.
yep, the 3PO and the R2. So if that's something you were into, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. And Kenner maintained its name with even though the figures stopped coming out around the mid to late 80s, because there was like a waning interest in Star Wars at the time, because there was no new Star Wars coming out after the Droids and Ewoks series. That was pretty much it. Right, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the shows have touched on that Kenner wanted to continue the line, and it was actually Lucasfilm, specifically, I think George Lucas, who's like, we want to give the brand a rest.
Yep. That's what we've heard. Yeah. And then, but then a renaissance, if you will, a return to greatness with a little bit of a different take came in 1995. And we probably heard a commercial similar to this.
The Star Wars Power of the Force Collection. The biggest ships for the biggest battles. Now, in the sleek X-Wing fighter as Rebel hero Luke Skywalker, you experience the real movie sounds of spaceflight. Your mission free Han Solo from the clutches of Darth Vader and bounty hunter Boba Fett. Now you have Imperial scout troopers on their speeder bikes. And massive scout walkers to deal with. Are the X-Wing's laser cannons enough to free Han Solo? Now you have the power. The Star Wars Power of the Force Collection. Figures and vehicles each sold separately from Kenner.
Indeed, a return came with Power of the Force, or as many people call it, Power of the Force 2. As Chris explained, the original Power of the Force came out right after a Return of the Jedi. That's when they switched to the coins on the backs on the cards as well with the figures.
Yep, absolutely. And that commercial, man, it brings back memories because, you know, while I grew up in the vintage, you know, like I was a kid during that vintage era, probably, like I said, not Star Wars, but definitely a little bit of Empire, mostly Return of the Jedi. That's the one that I remember. That's the one I remember going, my parents taking me to the theater. Even though I've been told I saw Empire in theaters, I don't have a recollection of it. But I can tell you, I remember going to Return of the Jedi opening night. And I remember after we went, going to the store and getting a figure. I unfortunately don't remember the figure because it wasn't my first Star Wars figure. But it was, you know, we went to the store, each got a figure.
I want to talk about that. So you only remember the first one, not what came after.
Well, I mean, I don't remember because I was still like, we just saw the movie and we're in this. Yeah, I know, but it's crazy. Actually, my first one, real quick, you know, we talk about our memories. My first Star Wars figure was given to me by my cousin. We were visiting him, and he had some figures, and he gave me his Darth Vader figure, and he gave my brother Luke Skywalker from those original.
Was it the telescoping?
No, they weren't telescoping.
Okay, you know, I had to ask the question. The question had to come.
My brother was notorious for losing things, so he lost the lightsaber probably within a couple days. Yeah, it was different. You could tell growing up because I still have most of our original figures. I have them all now, but his
Chris
were all
was
missing.
Sitting in the corner, polishing it, placing it in a protective case.
You know, I was. You know, you talk about, you know, kids, and I think there's two different kinds of kids. There's the collector kids who play with their toys but kind of collect, and then there's the kids who just play with their toys. And I was definitely the collector kid because
I was most the second one.
The you played with them?
Oh yeah, you wouldn't want to see my old Turtles figures. You would have a heart attack.
I mean, I played with them. I still played with them, but I was very meticulous about making sure I knew where the guns were and all that. So I still have those figures. I don't necessarily have them displayed because I've upgraded to better versions because they paint and stuff. But most of mine had the weapons, and most of the ones I got from my brother did not have the weapons. I shouldn't say most of them, but a lot of them didn't. So, but I have that memory. So that's where I got my first Star Wars figure and I still tease my cousin to this day. I blame him for this. But to kind of go back to the modern,
Did you blame him for G.I. Joe too?
Nope, that was all my
parents.
A different.
That was
my parents started us down the He-Man and G.I. Joe path. So
there you go.
I just love toys.
Hey, that's why we're here.
Yeah. But Power of the Force 2, what we kind of refer to now as the beginning of the modern line, which honestly, you could almost now consider those vintage.
Yeah,
right?
I would agree with you. I really wouldn't say those are modern now. I would agree with you on that. I think it's definitely gearing more into the if people think some of the old Metallica songs are vintage, then yes, Power of the Force 2 is vintage.
Yeah. You could make the argument that some of the other collections are that as well. But Brian, why don't you give us a little history of what happens to Kenner there during that time?
Oh yeah, well, as you know, I mean, and you probably still see it on some figures today. You'll see the Kenner logo, but done more as kind of a throwback. But Kenner as a company had an interesting story. It started out as under the parent company General Mills. I'm sure you've all heard of General Mills. But then Kenner eventually did brand themselves and merge and become Kenner Parker Toys, its own entity. And during the main time of the Star Wars line, and then switched over to a company you've also heard of called Tonka Toys. And then eventually what today came across and took over that company, which would be in Hasbro in 1991. So yeah, when those toys came out in 95, those Kenner toys in 95, they were actually still Hasbro toys. So a lot of people don't realize that, even though the branding, everything was known as Kenner, but Hasbro was still the ownership, the parent company of Kenner at that time when Power of the Force 2 came out. And it wasn't until the end of the 90s when we started to hit 99 into 2000 when we saw the Kenner name coming off the toys in 99 when we start talking about the prequel films in a bit. But then 2000, the actual company name was retired fully. And we only really see Kenner pop up here and there when we see some throwback cards that are released by Hasbro.
Yep, that's correct. It's interesting. I just put this together is that I wonder if Hasbro owned General Mills during the time when they were doing some of those mail-aways during the Power of the Force 2. So you had the mail-away of Han and Stormtrooper gear. You had the mail-away of Obi-Wan. And I believe those were General Mills cereals that you had to mail away to. So I wonder. Could have been
a previous relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great point.
We talk about that time and the in between getting the last kind of figures in Star Wars in 85 was the last of kind of the movie figures, and then we had droids and Ewoks, but you had this period that's affectionately known to fans as the dark times.
Yes. Before the dark times, before the Empire. Yeah.
We didn't have any really toy presence, and then in early, I don't remember exactly the dates, but we started getting some
95 is when the VHS is released, and they were starting to try and bring back Star Wars in. Lucasfilm had decided they wanted to bring Star Wars back in the limelight. So 95, a bunch the VHS release came out for Star Wars. It had Leonard Maltin's interview with George in front of them on the 95 sets. And Leonard Maltin's interviews were these exciting interviews because George was like, yeah, we're working on some new content for Star Wars. We're very excited about it. We're looking at it. It could be in the next few years. We're developing some stories. We're going to tell Anakin's story, and he went in and did all that thing and which gave us, and I say, oh my God, we're getting new Star Wars movies. And everybody started freaking out. But before that, we're going to be releasing Star Wars back in the theaters again. And we saw the promos were like, you've only seen it this way, right?
Yep.
On TVs.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
And then you saw the X-Wing fly out of the TV. I remember these commercials. And we went and saw it in the theater, right? And then in special editions hit in 97. So it was obviously they had this prepared launch, right? That like they knew 95 they were going to relaunch the brand, right? To the modern age and the common person, right? Bring it to mainstream. Back again, Star Wars. And that's when they revitalized and also started releasing things called the expanded universe started really blowing up, right? We started to see things like books and comics that were tying in with the original trilogy characters. Not so much prequel stuff yet, right? That wasn't really launching yet. They were just trying to get people excited about Star Wars with characters they knew.
The Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah, the Thrawn trilogy. Yep. The Shadows of the Empire. Both video, there was a whole slew of releases, right? You had the video game, you had the comic adaptation, you had the book by Steve Perry. I can't believe I remember that. And one of my favorite books. And they started releasing stories in between the times, right? Between the times of the trilogy, starting to get people excited again about Star Wars. And if you remember, the Power of the Force 2 figures were very different, right? They were like this He-Man-esque buff characters, right?
Yeah, they were very very much a product of their time.
Yes.
With that buff barrel chested, look. And to be fair, as the line no kidding. Luke was lifting, man.
Dude, Chewie started taking in those taking in those squats, man. He was like he was really getting ready to take on the whole Empire himself.
And Leia was drinking those protein shakes because they were all buff, but
they were all buff, man. It was crazy.
As the line went on, that kind of started to tone down and we got more regular proportions. But it's when you say Power of the Force 2, you think of two things. You think of the Return of Star Wars and you think of the buff figures.
Yes.
I mean, that's just what everyone thinks of. And unfortunately, I think that well, there's two reasons why I say unfortunately. The first reason is I think unfortunately people remember those figures for the buff ones, and they often forget that the line did kind of start to normalize a little bit. But also, I think that when I say unfortunately, people did a lot of speculating. I mean, that period in the 90s was, and I'm not just talking about toys here, we're talking about comic books, sports cards, Beanie Babies, and Star Wars. I mean, people were buying this stuff.
It's an investment.
Yep. They were thinking they were going to put their kids through college and retire early. And they, so.
Oh yeah. That was also the time of the beginning of Image Comics, where you had all these brand new comic stories coming out of the big artists that all left Marvel and DC to start their own brand. And I mean, that was the time for all number ones, right? There was all these people saying, I'm going to buy number one. I'm going to buy this investment. It's going to be worth a lot of money.
Death of Superman.
Yeah. Death of Superman. Rebirth of Superman.
So
Black Bag, the White Bag. Yeah.
This is all during, this is a little bit after the Superman, but this is all going on during that mid 90s craze of people buying up pop culture in all of its forms, and
all the ephemera was going, everybody wanted it. Yeah.
But it's because they were looking back into the 80s, and that stuff was all of a sudden starting to be worth something. Now,
sound familiar?
Yeah, right. Exactly. And in those times, the what we call now vintage figures were pricey for their time. I would love to pay those 90s prices for vintage figures.
You and me both.
But it is kind of crazy. But you mentioned Shadows of the Empire, and I really want to point out that was treated like a movie without being a movie. It really was. The media push. I remember I didn't have an N64, but I knew some people that did, and playing the Shadows of the Empire game. It was the first time you could battle the walkers on Hoth, which was really cool. The graphics are dated now and it's kind of clunky, but back then it was like, man, this is so cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, you had new ships like the Outlander and all new characters, new bounty hunter characters, and all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, you even got some weird stuff at the time. Remember the Masters of Terrakasi fighting game?
Yep. I have that game.
I have it too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, also Rogue Squadron 2. You had Rogue Squadron 2 come out at that time in the mid 90s. Yeah.
And then you start to get towards, as you get in later on, you get Dark Forces for the PlayStation
and the Jedi Knight series. Yeah.
Yep.
And things, Star Wars Galaxies, all that started to hit up and come across. Yeah.
That really was the start of the push to bring Star Wars back. And even before that, you started to see, before Hasbro had brought that back, you started to see some applause figures. Not very much. Yeah, you saw some applause figures coming out before Hasbro had made it back. So this was definitely a calculated move by Lucasfilm to bring the stuff back. But I don't know if they knew just how popular it was going to be, because for me, while Power of the Force 2 figures might not be the best representation of those characters, I have a real nostalgia for collecting at that time. And of course, I am now in my early 20s. I was working 2 jobs at one point. I was working at a grocery store, a company called Jewel in the Midwest. And I decided, I had a lot of free time. So I went and got a second job at Target part-time. And that kind of led me getting into a team lead role and becoming, going into the Target full time. But I saw these figures for the first time. I didn't know they existed until I started working at Target. And I was like, what? So the Star Wars nerd in me was able to just come out fully, and I had disposable income. I was working 2 jobs. I honestly started to get to a point where I had money and not enough time because I was working all the time, but I would, they were affordable. I would buy, every payday, because we got paid weekly back then, I would buy like 3 or 4. And if you got them on sale, you could get them 3 for $10. When these came out, I believe the price point retail was $3.99. They did go up to $5, but you could get them up on sale. Like I said, 3 for $10 on sale. So for $10, 3 figures, I was loving it.
Absolutely. I mean, I had to I went through the same experience, but it was years later for me. And it was during the prequel times. And I was working at Target doing the same thing. It's funny how history repeats itself. You were doing it in the mid 90s and I was doing it in the early 2000s. The same thing. Yeah. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think that, as we kind of are wrapping up, Power of the Force 2, which is really what launched Star Wars again.
Right. Go ahead.
We've had 27 years since Power of the Force 2 came out. Wow. So the modern figure era, as we call it, air quotes around modern, right?
Yeah, right.
Has had more than triple the amount of time of what the original vintage figures had in their run. And Power of the Force 2 not only set the stage for modern Star Wars collecting, but it had a major impact on toy collecting in general. It was the first line to kind of come back out, that really played on people's nostalgia and got them back into the toy aisles and buying those things. And those models were studied by other toy companies. They were imitated by other toy companies. I mean, and then you have things that have come out of that, like, that came out later on, Spawn, even starting lineups, like, because that was a Kenner product too. That was a big thing going on at the time. And then you get into, we start to see Marvel Legends and other things, but Star Wars Power of the Force 2 really kicked open the door, because before that, it was mostly kids buying toys. It wasn't adults. I think that's where adult collecting really kicked off in mass, if you will. I'm sure there's always been adult collectors, but that's where it started in mass, like we know it today.
I agree. I think that's a very good point. And I'll bring us back on the history track here. And after Power of the Force 2, we did follow up with Power of the Jedi series as well. Power of the Jedi is where we did, as Chris mentioned before, transition from the buff to more of the normal proportioned characters. And we started to see some preview looking characters of the prequel characters we would be able to see in episode 1 eventually in the 99 release of the main line of episode 1.
They are good. They are evil. They are alien. They are wise. And they are can find the complete collection from Star Wars Episode 1. It's a selection of epic proportions, and they are waiting. Toys R Us.
And Episode 1 was the start of something brand new. It was the start of a brand new trilogy of figures where each film had its own specific packaging and look. We started to get very exclusive and specific packaging art and packaging feels for things. And also, I will say, with Power of the Force and Power of the Jedi and so forth and so on, we started getting a lot more vehicles and a lot more creatures.
Yes.
And things really started to expand that universe of figures. And we started to see the release of, we had 12 backs, right? In the very beginning, the 12 back from when Phantom Menace hit, we started getting figures in the 10s, right? We're starting to look at getting individual characters that they would never have thought they would make back in the 70s. We're talking like random side senator characters, and we're getting deep, even with the original line release of these figures.
Oh yeah, and even with Power of the Force 2, we started to get characters we never got. So Tarkin was planned in the vintage line. We never got him. If you collect the retro collection now, we got that Tarkin figure. That's a throwback to what they wanted to do with vintage, but never got there. So Power of the Force 2, it was a big deal when we got Tarkin, and we got some other characters that, I never thought we'd get. Pote Snicken, Ishi Tib. I mean, those guys, I never thought we'd see those characters. Pote Snicken's on screen for less than a second. Ishi Tib is on screen for a very brief moment. I mean, these are characters that we're getting them in the Power of the Force 2 line. And, as you pointed out, Brian, we're getting vehicles. And I want to point out that those first Power of the Force 2 vehicles, all of those were straight up remolds using the original molds from the original vehicles. Eventually, they would start to do new molds, and we'd get more electronics and bigger ships, which we'll get to. But those first ships
that's when we expanded to Action Fleet, and we got even some more really cool Micro Machine stuff and more lines of different.
Oh yeah, that Micro Machines was its own thing. Which I remember collecting. But Brian, I'm going to let you talk about a certain tradition that started with the Phantom Menace too. We come to love.
We started to get these very structured releases, and what we're saying is there would be this buildup of there would be a one night, and many times we've all affectionately called it Midnight Madness, where they would release this first layer of figures and characters and some vehicles and some other tie-ins, and they would all release on that opening night. There may even be some kinds of giveaways and other kinds of exclusives at different retailers. It all really started with where we all wanted to never grow up, which was to be a Toys R Us kid. And Toys R Us was really where a lot of these fun events started, and eventually expanded to places like where Chris and I have worked out in the past, like Target and Walmart and other retailers. KB Toys still was involved early on in the prequels. They kind of died out right after Episode 2 is when that company kind of went under. But yeah, Midnight Madness was so much fun. I can't even begin to name all the various experiences I have with the prequels coming out, getting to hang out with fans, waiting for it to hit midnight so we could go in and overspend on toys in the middle of the night.
I mean, we could do a whole show, I'm sure, of just our recollections of our Midnight Madness experience. Yeah. I do want to briefly, and I'll keep it brief because I mean, like I said, we could go into each one of these that had a Midnight Madness, but for the first one, I didn't do Midnight Madness because I had the opportunity. I was a team lead working at Target, and my buddy, I was not in charge of toys, but my buddy, Tom Tippery, shout out to Tom Tippery. He was running the toy department, and, he asked me, he's like, do you want to help me set up the Star Wars? And he's like,
wow.
And I was like, absolutely.
You're
and
a piece of history.
Yeah. And I said, I just have one question. Can we clear it with the manager that in the morning I can go ahead and grab what I want to get? Cause I'm not going to go out and do Midnight Madness. And the manager was like, absolutely. You can buy it in the morning when back then you could check out before the store opened and whatever, and I was able to use my 10% off, which helped. But we worked all night and we set up that aisle, and it was a whole aisle, both sides, with end caps, with the signage and everything. And him and I set that up. We got to do the planogram, and then the best part was filling it and seeing those new characters. And I got to see him. I'm kind of glad I did it that way, because I got to see him without like 1,500 hands in front of me trying to grab, so I could actually really enjoy it. And then I was able to take, there was nothing rare in that series or anything, but I was able to grab one of each, put them in my cart, and check out that morning and whatever. But it was really something to be a part of like that, and then to see, like, I got to see the people waiting that didn't, either went to Midnight Madness and didn't get everything they wanted, or people that didn't go that were coming to Target that morning. And I remember the line. I remember like people almost running in to go mob the aisle. And, we were off the clock, but we kind of just hung back and watched it and then went to breakfast.
Wow.
And it's such a great memory. And you've probably seen me, Brian. I know the listeners can't hear this, but that Star Wars hat that I wear that says the Phantom Menace, that came, I bought that at Midnight Madness. That was one of the pieces of merchandise. So a little story there.
Yeah, so many good memories. I would say one thing that was cool for me is I think it was the summer of 2000, I want to say, I took a college run trip to Chicago, Chris. And I was in FAO Sports, and I got to see the display. And where they had the X-Wing hanging from the ceiling. I have a photo somewhere of it.
Oh yeah.
Did you remember that setup?
Yeah, that was a sweet setup.
Yeah. And I just remember, and I wasn't like a big toy collector at that time, but obviously it was in my blood. I took that photo, and I still look back at that photo and just think, wow, that was so cool to be able to see that in the heyday, of everything. But yeah, I remember that. And then what I remember most from Attack of the Clones really was when KB was going out of business, and they had all these bins of Attack of the Clones figures. But I do want Chris to explain about Attack of the Clones, what was unique about Attack of the Clones series.
Yeah, so Attack of the Clones, it was decided because the Phantom Menace had such a, and I love to use this word, a glut of merchandise that towards the end of the line of the Phantom Menace stuff, the figures did well, but there was so much other stuff and ancillary that people's attention was getting pulled. And remember, I should have pointed this out and I forgot. This is the first time we get Lego. Lego comes onto the scene.
Yeah, that's right. That was the first time Lego got the Star Wars license. Yeah.
Yep. Lego starts around the prequels and around the Phantom Menace. And I remember getting some Legos too, but there was so much merchandise that they needed to kind of, fans were confused and they needed to kind of not put out as much. So Attack of the Clones did have a line, but it was the only Star Wars movie not to have the toy collection use the movie name.
Correct.
It came to be known as Saga Collection, which not to be confused with the Saga Collection, which comes later in 2006, but it was on those blue cards. And it was kind of weird because opening night, looking for characters, people didn't know a lot. This one was kept a lot more under wraps. And the figures, remember, this is when figures released before movies. Right. So we were able to get these toys before movies. And if you remember, there was an infamous spoiler on actually there, the original Phantom Menace, we had the spoiler on the back of the CD. And then we had the spoiler on the toy line with Anakin losing his arm. And that Dooku was Tyrannus because of the red lightsaber that came with him. So they've gotten better about that, but that collection came on those blue cards, and opening night, they also had other characters from the trilogy. So it was kind of like it encompassed all of the saga. So which is why I think fans started to call it the Saga Collection, but you're starting to see some upgrades on figures there. I believe most of those figures came with some kind of base or stand. with the lightsaber characters.
There were
We
some
started
accessories.
removable lightsaber hilts or blades from the hilt, and the hilts could plug into the side of the character. You started to get blast effects for the lightsabers.
Mm-hmm. We started to see some deluxe figures that could do different things, like the Jango and Obi-Wan that went together, where you could spring Obi-Wan as if he was trying to jump after Jango Fett.
Yep.
Yeah, we got some different things there. And but most importantly, we got Dexter Jettster. I mean, that was the best part.
Yes, it's funny. So I don't want to go too far off a tangent, but the sidebar today, some of the Celebration store merchandise came out, and there's a neon sign that's in Arabic that says Dex's Diner, and I'm like, that would be really awesome. Cool. Yeah, I love that character.
Yeah. Oh, what do you know? Yeah. Good
but
times.
Brian, I want to, because I know the next one we're going to kind of hit here is a collection that
it's near and dear to my heart.
So I'm going to let you run with this one.
Oh yeah. Revenge of the Sith is my child right there. I've spent many days doing runs to complete this. I literally have every single figure, both deluxe and single carded, from this set, including variations. It's insane. I have a problem. I didn't do this again. It was only this one, but this is also this was an interesting time for me, because it was both pre and post Katrina that I feel like it was also part of a bit of a coping mechanism for me during that time as well, because Revenge of the Sith, the toy started coming out, and obviously the film came out before Katrina, but then Katrina hit in August, right after the film was released in May of that year, obviously. But the figures kept coming out, right, for the next rest of that year into the beginning of next year. And I really would kind of focus in on collecting. It kept me going. And I collected a lot of Revenge of the Sith figures, and I just loved it. I just loved the line, the artwork, the variations of characters. It was just so much fun. It was just such a fun time. And I feel like it was the last, I guess it could be jaded by my opinion, but I feel like it was the last time we really got a fully intensive line of figures based off of a film. And I feel like George thought this was it. This was the last film. So I'm bringing out all the stops. I'm putting everything out there. And that's how I felt like when I collected Revenge of the Sith, that was it. This was it. I'm going to get as much as I can so I can hold on to Star Wars forever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair statement to say that we haven't had a dedicated movie line like Revenge of the Sith since. And I think it's fair to point out that Revenge of the Sith was I want to say it encompassed 1 year, which was 2005. I think it might have spilled into 2006 a little bit, but it had like 60 plus figures in the line, which was the largest line we had to date at that point. I mean, Power of the Force 2 got pretty big, and Saga wasn't as big as Power of the Force 2 or Episode 1.
Packaging,
Revenge of the
bubble.
So you had the combination of the packaging, the bubble.
Yeah, everyone the silhouette of Vader and Obi-Wan on the front of fire. Oh wait, that sounds familiar.
The
coming next. Yeah.
Everyone thinking that this was going to be the last movie for Star Wars.
Well, they were promoting at the end of the saga.
Yeah, I mean, the line was deep. The vehicles kept coming for that line.
Yeah.
It's no secret here that I've been lately, I don't want to say I've been down on Hasbro, but I've kind of been not as satisfied with the selection that we're getting in Star Wars. But this weekend, I've been reorganizing. I feel like I'm always reorganizing, but I've been reorganizing my storage to make better use of totes that weren't full. And long story short, I used to have my 3 3/4 inch figures divided by collection. So I had, Saga and Revenge of the Sith and original trilogy collection. That's how they were divided. And sometimes I'd have multiple in one if there wasn't enough that's hard to find figures that I need for what I need them. So this weekend I went through all of my containers and redid them by movie. But oh man, do I have a ton of Revenge of the Sith clones.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with that.
No,
Ain't nothing wrong with that at all.
Actually, what happened is I needed to put them, I combined them and Imperial troopers in their own tote, because that's how much I have of those guys.
Wow.
But Revenge of the Sith was a line that went deep. I appreciated how deep it went. I appreciated the characters that they did. I mean, we've talked about it before on the show. Like, you're not going to get senators anymore. And even like, I don't remember what, I think it was in the Saga line that we got like Hermie Odal and I can't remember the other big guy, but you were just not going to see those
Elephant Mon.
Yeah, that's it. Elephant Mon. We're not going to see those guys again. And I think that Revenge of the Sith was was a good cap. And we started to get some good articulation in there.
Yeah, we did.
You can start to see we're not quite at the pinnacle of the line as far as like articulation yet, but you're starting to see we're moving there. And I think like early on too, I think during the original trilogy collection, which was the year before that, we got the VOTC.
04, yeah.
The VOTC
vintage original trilogy collection.
Yep.
Yeah, which came already with protective cases.
Yep. And those were really well done figures. I would say that
hard to hunt down.
And they hold up today. Those figures hold up today.
I remember those.
Yeah. I tried to complete the set and I never completed that whole set.
I bought one and then I'm like, I'm never gonna complete the set, and I let it go. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not putting myself through this. And I'm like, Revenge of the Sith, you're my child. This is what's happening. And then I moved on. But
so which brings us,
yes.
I was gonna say, brings us to kind of the post prequel / what I call Clone Wars era.
Yeah. We switched from. We started in 2007. We had our first major anniversary line with the 30th anniversary collection, where we brought back the coins.
Yep. And if what Revenge of the Sith is to you, the 30th anniversary collection is to me. That's the first one where I'm like, I am definitely getting all line. 60 characters.
I almost did.
That's where we got Han with the torture device. Come on, you're not going to get that now.
You know what's funny? At the toy show we went to, I tried. No one wanted to buy that.
It's crazy. That's
crazy to me.
That's an awesome figure. Like, and I've since opened all those, but the coins that came with them, the coin book that you could get, this is when we're starting to really, the line is kind of like starting to hit its stride. I think Revenge of the Sith is the start of them, it really hitting its line. And I think like, from Revenge of the Sith to about 2012, I'm going to say is like we really hit the pinnacle of the line.
Yeah, I agree. We really started to get some amazing characters, amazing articulation, amazing accessories.
Yeah.
And the accessories that came with the figures, what you were getting for that price point of $5.99 to $6.99 at that time was phenomenal. I mean, the price per item that you received it had reached its pinnacle. It was only going to go bad from there. Like you knew that was it. That like you knew that you've reached the ultimate, because from then on, either we didn't get much with it, or we got, if we wanted more, we had to pay more. Things started changing.
We'll get there, but we almost went through a second dark time. There was that period from about 2012. Even maybe a little bit earlier
about
than
the
that.
Black Series hit. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because I remember, because I was like, what am I going to
2010 to 2012, there was nothing. In that time period, there was really nothing going on. And then 2012, they announced, like you said, the vintage collection came back.
Yeah, so the vintage collection had started.
2018. I got that messed up in my head. Yeah, vintage collection came back in 2010 and ran to 2012. It was 2012. You're right. It was 2012 to about 2013, where there was literally nothing. And then they tried to launch a brand new line in the summer of that year with the SCCC, Boba Fett, and Han Solo and Carbonite, and where they announced the 6-inch line with Black Series.
Yep.
And yeah, it was like a good year and a half that we didn't get anything.
I switched over because there was so little to collect, and they put the vintage collection on hiatus because they kind of screwed up, and they put out some characters that people really what it was, they put out the Phantom Menace characters first in that line, and those ended up clogging the pegs on vintage collection. And then I think you had the 3D stuff that was coming out, which clogged the pegs too.
With
and
episode 1 3D coming out.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a couple of those.
It was too much episode 1, and then it started to clog pegs for the vintage collection because there was some episode 1
But I
characters
did buy my
in there.
Walmart exclusive Qui-Gon Jinn lightsaber.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
Where's my
remember
legacy
those.
saber, Disney? Where's my
Oh.
Qui-Gon legacy saber? You teased me, and then you gave me Cal Kestis. I want Qui-Gon.
Yeah. Well, you want Qui-Gon and I want Yoda. So
That's right.
we're
Bring 'em
both
both. I'll
waiting.
buy
We're
'em
both
both.
waiting. Yep. But the interesting thing is I think that we get some really great lines there. The Clone Wars for the movie. We got another Midnight Madness
Midnight
with
Madness.
that event.
Yeah, I was there.
The Legacy collection, which is it's a great collection.
Yeah,
and it's a
good mix.
really expensive collection to collect now because they were so hard to find back in the day.
Yeah, no one to buy them from me though.
You know, I find that so weird because it had
It's
the
weird.
Build a Droid, and they had some really great character selection. They gave us like they gave us the drummers from Jabba's palace, and there was that last wave. You know, we talk about last wave syndrome, and Star Wars, I think, is where that started. But the last wave always seemed to be hard to find. But there was the
Always.
Jaina and Jason Solo.
I
Remember
did let those go for a pretty pricey amount.
Yeah, I mean, but those were so hard to
Yeah.
find.
That was hard to let go. I had that. Also had Crook too from that same wave. I had the whole wave.
I have him. I got him at retail, which I was lucky enough.
I got
but-
all three at retail.
Oh, nice. Yeah. See?
Oh yeah, I had all three at retail.
But those were
And-
so hard to find. You know, in that collection, that
Dude,
kind
you
of
should
was.
saw my face when I found. I was like freaking. I was like hiding it from everybody. I was like running the register. I'm like, no one's taking these. Yeah. yeah.
But I mean, that was kind of like 2008 to 2010. We got the Legacy collection, but that's
Yeah.
the start of things starting to dry up. And like we talked about, we had that because I switched over to collecting Marvel Universe, which came out, and I
Oh,
started
yeah, you
getting
did. Yeah.
hot and heavy into Marvel Universe because I was like, okay, Marvel's starting to get big, and
right.
I enjoy, I'm like
The start of the MCU.
yeah. And then, I was kind of at first, I don't know how you felt, Brian, but at first I was like, I'm not collecting 6-inch,
I'm
3
not doing-
3/4 or die, like
no,
that-
I was heavy into Marvel Legends at that time, and I was like, heck yeah. Yeah, I've been waiting for this my whole life. That was
There you
me.
go.
I was in that crowd. I was like, hey, I've been waiting for these scales forever. Bring on the 12 scale. That's what I was like. And now I'm like, you know what? Those are too small for me. I need a hot toy.
And see,
What's
now-
wrong with me? Yeah.
And see, I was opposed to those coming out at first, and now I'm like, hey man, give me the 1/12 scale, like
I
give
always
me
had
that.
a love for the 12-inch figure though, because I always bought the Hasbro 12 inches back when they were good.
Oh
Do
yes.
you remember when they were good?
Yeah. That
Revenge
was
of the Sith. I have the I think it's the Bara Sophie from Revenge of the Sith, and I have the Emperor, and I have the Ultimate Villain 2-pack of Vader, Anakin. Yeah, I have those still.
some of those were really hard to find, and harder to find than 3 3/4 inch figures.
Yeah, I remember I hunted down to anyone from the Louisiana, New Orleans area knows this. I went all the way out to Chalmette, literally in the middle of the boondocks, to a Walmart, and I found all of them together, and it was like the best ever. My good friend David and I went out there, and he was a big Grievous fan, so I let him buy the Grievous. And I bought the other ones. But yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And but I wanted to keep moving forward here. So we did have a short small group of figures that came out with the Rebels series in 2014, which were really hard to find.
They were
Those
really
Rebels,
hard to find.
There
yeah.
were single cards and there were double pack cards, right? There were 2 figures to a card as well that came out.
Yeah, and those were you had to go to. I think most people were finding that had to go to Kohl's because that's where
Kohl's, right? That's what I heard.
Because
too.
I don't remember seeing those 2-packs anywhere but Kohl's, and I'm not sure if that was a line exclusive to Kohl's or what. but
Right.
some of those Rebels figures were really hard to track down.
Yeah, it was the only way you could pull down the main characters. until eventually, obviously, we got the 6-inch scale Black Series release of all the Rebels heroes.
Yep.
But then times change, ownership's changed, George changed, and so came Disney and the $4 billion contract.
And at first, this was a really exciting time. And I say at first, I don't mean to come across and sound jaded, but but
George didn't destroy your childhood.
No, he did not. And for the record, neither did J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson.
There you go.
But this was kind of for me, it was a very exciting time. Like, I was fully in on the Black Series now, the 6-inch. Remember, we had the Black Series in 2 scales, which was confusing for everybody.
That's right. We had the 3 3/4 Black Series that couldn't stay on card because the glue would come off every 5 seconds.
Yep.
And we had the orange and the blue line of the Black Series.
Yep. And some of those Black Series 3 3/4, I'm like, we got Darth Plagueis. They got some good ones in there too.
Right. We also had like an Anakin, like from like Force Unleashed, I think.
Yep. There were some good ones in there, but it's an exciting time. We've kind of gone through a mini dark times, if you will. There hasn't been a ton of product. Star Wars kind of felt like it was lacking a little bit. I think that the Black Series 6-inch line invigorated some much needed lifeline into it. But then we get the Disney announcement. And I know some people were kind of apprehensive. I was excited because I'd always said that if anyone was going to buy Star Wars and run with it, I thought Disney would do the best job. Ask me now, my answer might be a little bit different, but at that time, I thought Disney would be the perfect people to take it and run with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think everybody felt confident about that and was hopeful. And I still think there is still hope, obviously. I mean, I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom. I mean, we do have our issues with how it's being handled because, I mean, we've only ever known one person's story, and that was George. And then for a short time, his understudy, the great Mr. Dave Filoni, who learned under George when he was working on the Clone Wars and eventually helming his own thing with Rebels. And then obviously what we're seeing now with Mandalorian and all the spin-off pieces.
The Clone Wars has, we talked about the Clone Wars movie, but then you had the Clone Wars TV show, which really the Clone Wars movie kind of did very stylized figures, but then they started doing the Clone Wars TV show in more of a realistic style, and that show has a life of its own. People absolutely love that show, and rightfully so. There are some episodes that are hard to get through, but for the most part, it is a awesome series.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. So with the Disney sequels, we continue with the Black Series, which seemed to be the main vehicle for start. And we saw that, and we also saw a return to some 3 3/4, but not super articulated as we had grown to know that within the mid 2000s and late 2000s, going into 2010s and the beginnings of that. It was more of a 5 POA, right? Really just having the arms and legs and head move, but on really nice art cards that were based off the film look. That's what we got with Force Awakens, and with Force Awakens, we also got a Midnight Madness for the first time since 2008, which was fun.
Yes, it was fun.
And I think it was a nice return. And then we saw kind of a smaller one with Rogue One the following year. Same thing with Last Jedi. Even with Solo, we saw some things, an individual line as well. But when Rise of Skywalker came around in 2019, things changed, right? We saw maybe 2-3 characters released. There was no focus line. Honestly, virtually no toy line there. And things just got really kind of stagnant.
Yeah. What we end up getting is, as you touched on, for Force Awakens forward, we kind of got these 5 POA, and we're not picking on 5 POA because some of them were absolutely gorgeous sculpts.
Yeah. Some were better than the Black Series.
Yeah. And they were good, but we were getting those, and then we get some Black Series figures when Walmart had the exclusive Black Series line in those little boxes.
Oh yeah,
we did get like a Phasma and a Ray and a Fit. We did get
a Luke.
And then when Vintage Collection came back out in 2018, they re-released those figures on the Vintage Collection cards. And we got some of those characters, and we've gotten a smattering of those.
Yeah,
I think we got a Last Jedi Luke, which I ended up parting with. Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I had the crate, the Luke from crate, and I ended up parting with. It was a hard figure to find, but I'm like, I couldn't bring myself to open it because I know that it was so hard, and I'm like, I'm being an opener, and I'm like, I don't need. Honestly,
don't need it then. I need to let it go.
I have a lot of, I have all those collections: Force Awakens, Rogue One, Last Jedi, Solo. I don't have anything from Rise of Skywalker. I'm selling off my Rise of Skywalker. I think I've sold off everything I had for that. I don't hate any of the Star Wars movie, but Rise of Skywalker is not my cup of tea, and that's okay.
I gotta be honest. I never thought I would say this. I own every single physical media version of Star Wars. The only movie I couldn't bring myself to buy was Rise of Skywalker, and I still don't own it to this day.
I own it. I own the soundtrack.
I like the completist in me. My dislike of the film, and I'm not trying to trash it for anyone that enjoyed it. Okay, if you enjoyed it, that's fantastic. I'm happy that you enjoyed it, but I've never disliked a movie enough that made me not want to buy it and complete what a sprawling saga that I have. Every movie, I literally have every version of Star Wars. Even I own Rogue One. I even own Solo, but I couldn't bring myself to buy it. And it was even on sale for $10 on 4K. I couldn't bring myself to buy it. It's just, I'm sorry. It's just not a good film.
I've seen Rise of Skywalker 3 times. Once with Sarah opening night, once with Sarah and my sister when we were back home for Christmas in 2019. And that was special because that's the same sister that I took and got her into Star Wars and Attack of the Clones and stuff like that. She remembers that. And that was a special moment. So whether I like the movie or not there is irrelevant, but
of course
the third time I saw it was when it came out on home video, and I brought it home to watch, and I haven't watched it since. And even then I was fast forwarding through a lot of it.
Right.
And I'm not gonna, I'm a true believer in take what you love and run with it. You don't need
exactly.
You don't need to hate on everything. And there's people out there that say, well, if you love everything, then you can't find fault with anything and you're not a real fan. And then there's the people that say, well, if you don't love everything, no, you don't have to love everything to be a real fan. And you don't, if you do love everything, that doesn't mean that you're not a real fan either. Take what you love. And, we've talked about this a lot. Take what you love and just move on. And what you don't like, just, it's fine. If you don't like Last Jedi, and I know there's a ton of people out there
people that don't,
it's fine. But
all power to you.
We got Star Wars movies. We got figure lines, albeit smaller. But then, 2018, we talked about it. We get the Vintage Collection back, and that's pretty much been the only vehicle for 3 3/4, with the exception of we did get the Star Wars Resistance line, which I didn't buy any of those.
Oh, okay.
That supported that show. And we also got Forces of Destiny, which was its own line. But it was more of a.
My wife loves those.
Yeah, I have the Luke and the Yoda, and
I have that one too.
We bought a bunch of those and sent them to our nieces and stuff. But so we got some of those lines. But and then of course we've had the Black Series that we've talked about, was just the main vehicle.
But now what we have now is the Mandalorian, and every single version you could possibly have, every color, every type of element that he's been in, may it be mud, water, whatever. We have every version of Grogu. Now that he has a name, we can re-release it saying Grogu instead of the child on the packaging. It's just like it. Mandalorian. It and also it's how many figures can we get out of one body, kind of thing. I'll tell you what, I've never seen one figure used so much for another figure than the original Darth Maul Episode 1
Oh yeah, those
So
pants.
one body.
Oh
those
my
pants
gosh.
have been used on so many figures. It's ridiculous. Like I can't even begin. But all kidding aside, at least Mandalorian has brought us some cool new characters, even though they decide they don't want to make the other characters other than the main two, because that's what sells.
Well, they're
But-
making they're finally giving us they give us the preview of we're gonna get the Migs Mayfield from
3 years later.
Right. It is a little it makes me wonder, like, how long is it going to take to get Obi-Wan? I mean, we're not even going to get the Obi-Wan figure from that we just pre-ordered the other day that went up for pre-order last week.
I didn't
That's
really
not
like
even
the look of it. It looked too plain to me. Like I feel like there's
pre-ordered
going to
it.
be better versions.
I'm a
coming later.
sucker for Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan.
Oh, dude, look who you're talking to. Revenge of Sith is like my favorite.
Yeah.
You know I'm excited about Obi-Wan Kenobi, like that series. Like I can't wait. But I am being a lot more focused on, like, I think I'm not going to buy every version of Obi-Wan. I'm going to buy the one that I like the most. The first one didn't really hit me hard. I was like, I mean, I didn't want the Wanderer version. Maybe there'll be a different version that I like, and they may come out in a 2-pack with Vader one day. Who knows, right? Also, maybe I want to see what Hot Toys is going to cook up for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Oh, there you go. And
Maybe
that's
my
fair.
money's going that way. Instead of buying 8 to 10 different Black Series figures, I'm going to buy one really awesome Hot Toy. It just depends on how I want to spend that money.
Yeah, and I think I've made it. I've said it here on the show, but I am done on 3 3/4 after Mandalorian. So Book of Boba Fett forward. I haven't been getting them. I ran into the Fennec Shand at Target yesterday, and that's labeled Book of Boba Fett, and she stayed there because I'm sticking to that. I'm only doing 6-inch, 1/12 scale Black Series going forward for the newer properties. And part of that is because I'm not world building like I world builded, original trilogy and prequel trilogy. And let's be honest, there's not enough stuff out anymore to world build. There's no vehicles to support lines anymore. There's no, there's no ancillary stuff. And like we've talked about, really the only thing they're doing now for 3 3/4 is the vintage collection. And we've gotten a lot of repacks and re-releases in there lately. And of course, we're going to have to see where this no cardboard thing is going to take us, because I think that could spell the end of the vintage collection as we know it.
Yeah, we'll see. We shall see. But there's always going to be a future of Star Wars figures, and I guess we'll see what comes next. We've had a sprawling history of Star Wars throughout the years, going back to its small start back in 1977 with a box that gave a promise of figures coming the next year, to sprawling amount of hundreds and thousands and thousands and thousands of figures that have come out in millions of productions across multiple decades. Who would have ever thought that one small little space opera film that George Lucas made because they wouldn't let him make Flash Gordon would turn into the sprawling history of merchandising that we have today? And all we have to thank for that is some really amazing creative people sitting in a room designing plastic treats for us to enjoy.
Absolutely. And we didn't even touch on a lot of the merchandise that came out, and then there's bootlegs and
there's bootlegs.
all that
We
other
could talk
kinds
about
of stuff.
distributors overseas and how they did it differently, and how certain countries wouldn't allow certain things. And there's so much more to go into, and we would need a whole nother podcast to do that. But we just wanted to give a trip down memory lane for everybody today, and just give some of our high points, some of our individual stories and experiences to share with you this great month of May, on May 25th, Star Wars Day 2022.
Well, Brian, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Come back next month to hear us talk toys and collectibles on Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast. Until next time, we wish you good luck on your toy hunt.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show, we would love a 5-star review on iTunes. You can find Thrill of the Hunt, a collector's podcast, on Facebook at Thrill of the Hunt Collector Podcast. There you can interact with us and find links to our other social media channels. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed in this show are those of the hosts and belong solely to them. This podcast is not affiliated with any of the toy companies or licenses mentioned in the show. This show may not be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without express written consent from the hosts.